Excellencies, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, I thank His Excellency Ambassador Duke Lauber for his kind invitation. I congratulate him and his Bureau on the election. The three pillars of the United Nations are deeply interwoven. Upholding human rights is fundamental to achieving lasting peace and security and constitutes a sound basis for the realization of the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. We face serious global challenges, from armed conflicts and climate change to widening inequalities and deepening poverty. We are witnessing a sharp decline in human rights. There are growing violations and often brazen disregard for international humanitarian law. Those violations have devastating consequences. More than 300 million people now require humanitarian assistance. The urgency of this moment cannot be overstated. In every conflict, victims are often women, children, and minorities who bear the heaviest burden. The human suffering and destruction of infrastructure in Gaza, Ukraine, Sudan, Myanmar, Haiti, and the Democratic Republic of the Congo are intolerable. These injustices must end. Even war has rules. Civilians must never be targets. The recent special session and the establishment of an independent fact-finding mission to investigate and document human rights violations in Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo are good signals. This Council has once again demonstrated its ability to act swiftly to address violations and uphold accountability. The long overdue ceasefire in Gaza and the recent hostage release deal offer a glimmer of hope. The success of the ceasefire is of decisive significance. Only full implementation can secure a lasting ceasefire and ensure the uninterrupted flow of humanitarian aid. A just and lasting peace in the Middle East depends on a two-state solution. That solution will enable Israel and Palestine to coexist in peace and security in accordance with international law and United Nations resolutions. More broadly, dialogue must remain at the heart of conflict resolution. Dialogue is a powerful weapon which human beings must use for peace to prevail everywhere. We approach the 80th anniversary of the United Nations, an occasion the General Assembly will commemorate this year. Our calls for global peace must be more resolute, harnessing the powerful symbolism of this milestone year. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, last September, world leaders unanimously adopted the Pact for the Future, along with its annexes, the Global Digital Compact, and the Declaration on Future Generations. The Pact charts a decisive course toward a more just, equitable, and sustainable world, one where human rights are upheld for all, everywhere. Our Pact for the Future reaffirms international law, including the Charter of the United Nations, the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, and international humanitarian law. Our challenge now is implementation. Implementation is a task that will require full global mobilization with robust engagement from governments, United Nations agencies, international and regional organizations, as well as civil society. Implementation of the Pact is a process whose time has come. Organizations in Geneva will play a critical role in that process. Excellencies, protecting human rights and dignity is a cornerstone of my presidency of the General Assembly. Human dignity makes it possible for us to attain excellence and happiness. Last month, I convened one of my first signature events, Preserving Human Dignity in Armed Conflict. I was heartened by the strong political will of member states to uphold and reinforce their commitment to international humanitarian law. We will continue mobilizing advocacy to eliminate child labor in all its forms, including its use in armed conflict. To advance this goal, I will convene a discussion on child labor focused on protecting children and upholding their dignity. I will also focus on advancing the rights of older persons. In the coming months, I will convene a high-level meeting to consider the recommendations of the Working Group on Aging. Older persons must have full enjoyment of their human rights. Moreover, I will continue to address the enduring injustices of racism and colonialism. We will uphold the spirit that guided member states' decision last December to declare a second international decade for people of African descent. This declaration reaffirms our collective commitment to achieve recognition, justice, and development for people of African descent. To advance this commitment, I will convene the annual commemorative meetings for the International Day for the Elimination of Racial Discrimination and the International Day of the Remembrance of Victims of Slavery and the Transatlantic Slave Trade. Excellencies, earlier this session, I joined the Gender Champions Network. In doing so, I pledge to promote gender equality and women's empowerment. We will integrate a gender perspective throughout the General Assembly's work and my activities. I have re-established the Advisory Board on Gender Equality to focus on women's economic empowerment. That is necessary for the implementation of gender-related commitments in the Pact for the Future. We are happy that the Human Rights Council has followed this good practice. Additionally, I have appointed co-facilitators to lead consultations in preparation for a high-level meeting. This meeting will commemorate the 30th anniversary of the Fourth World Conference on Women and the landmark Beijing Declaration and Platform for Action, Beijing Plus 30. Excellencies, this year marks the 30th anniversary of the World Programme of Action for Youth. This underscores the critical role of young people in driving inclusive and sustainable development. We will convene member states in May for a discussion on how digitalization can enhance the Sustainable Development Goals. We are convinced that digitalization will empower young people in Africa. Throughout each of these engagements, I will emphasize the indispensable contribution of civil society to advancing human rights. The work of civil society is vital both to this Council and to the broader human rights agenda. That is a message I delivered at my town hall with civil society organizations held in New York just 2 weeks ago. We will also host the annual high-level debate on crime prevention. That will mark the 10th anniversary of the United Nations Standard Minimum Rules for the treatment of prisoners, the Nelson Mandela rules. The high-level debate on crime prevention will address the global prison challenge. That would mark the 10th anniversary of the Nelson Mandela rules to ensure humane treatment of prisoners. This year, we will also be awarding the Nelson Mandela Prize. This award is given every 5 years to 2 individuals who have dedicated their lives to serving humanity. I invite member states and other relevant stakeholders to submit nominations before the end of this month so that we can identify individuals who would honor the legacy of Nelson Mandela. The prize will coincide with the celebration of the Nelson Mandela International Day on 18th July. Excellencies, all these topics are closely related to my vision. These topics aim to promote human rights and preserve human dignity for all everywhere. As President of the General Assembly, I aim to advance the global human rights agenda. We are mindful that strengthening cooperation between the General Assembly and the Human Rights Council, 2 vital pillars of the United Nations, has never been more urgent. I urge all member states to ensure that the Human Rights Council remains a platform for genuine dialogue and meaningful cooperation to promote and protect human rights for everyone, everywhere. Greater resources and support are essential to enabling the Council to fulfill its mandate effectively, particularly as global challenges continue to increase. I look forward to working with all of you to further promote cooperation and complementarity between the Human Rights Council and the General Assembly. Our shared goal is upholding human rights and dignity for everyone, everywhere. I thank you.